Hey, this is Milz 505, aka Milz Musician, aka Milz from America, whatever you want to call me. And this is my wild card. No, just kidding. Wrong type of video. Alright, but for real though, this is a new video for the interview series that I haven't done one of these in quite a long time. So for this, we're still sticking with the RC505 loop station, of course, from Boss Roland. And today's topic is actually going to be an important topic, especially for someone like me who has some hearing sensitivity. So I figured, why not go back to the basics of just basic hearing protection and hearing loss prevention. So what does that mean for us as loopers or potential loopers? That means all the way going back from just how to set it up, which I already did a very detailed back to basics video. It's already up to almost 13K, so thank you for that, by the way. Check that out if you haven't already. Kind of more advanced part of that, all the way into a more intermediate step of when you're making a mix. Not so much the mastering on a DAW, that's for a different time. More so the mastering, things called faders, I'll show you that. The buttons, the effects, some effects are naturally softer, some are louder. So this video is to kind of put it all together and to help you and also have you share it with other people who may have some hearing sensitivity and just a general sense of safety, because why not? If we're not safe, if things are too loud, if things are too soft, and if you don't have someone to kind of show you to only move it up this much instead of that much or something like that, I think it could make the world a better place, safer place for our number one instrument, which is our ears, right? Right. Okay, so without further ado, turn the camera around, let's go.
So, of course, there are a lot of things to talk about, and as usual in my tutorials, I try to start with the upper left and kind of work my way around this way. So, let's talk about, logically, our input. Honestly, it depends on the background of your house. I really don't like to go past here, and because of that, I need to turn on. You can do some dynamics, hard limit or whatever. Keep in mind that as usual with dynamics and EQ functions, this knob maximum is plus 20. So it's kind of up to you. You shouldn't be going that loud until we start turning on an EQ. And generally, thing to note is that an EQ will make it way louder. Basically, a max EQ will always be louder than a max dynamic. So here I have a dynamic and an EQ on. Now with this, the output level, this is where you might want to turn it down or turn it up. It kind of depends. Now, if you're speaking of headphones, I highly recommend, if you want to not deal with feedback, I recommend when you're at home not using a speaker, I'd recommend honestly just plugging in your, a microphone in here, and then referring back to my tutorial a long time ago on part 1, where I showed you how to plug in headphones and get good headphones. So, dynamics EQ, I'd recommend not doing more than one EQ. Now, some people might want to do something like this. Let's say their dynamic was like this. That's kind of loud. I would say always be ready. No matter what's going on, always be ready. Be cognizant of where this is. If this is all the way to the right, it's going to be at its max. So if you're going to press something and like you're in the middle of one effect and you know that the next effect might be too loud, honestly, I would move this left or wherever you might need to be, okay? So that's what I would do with that. For example, if you know that you're about to do a granular delay or some kind of delay, so with granular delay, you notice that that's when it gets a little interesting. So you have feedback of 100. That's where you really want to be cognizant of your E level. Notice that I already had it down to 50. If it's like this, you really don't want that. Especially if you're inexperienced and you know that, and you just don't understand what feedback 100 means. Generally with a lower time, it's just naturally gonna get louder. Like all I literally did was, and then it's already you see how loud it is. So an inexperienced person is not gonna know how to do this. So that's now see as I guess you could do cool stuff with that. I don't know, like I don't know, and make some cool harmonic thing out of that. I don't know, and the same thing would go, panning delay, something, some, 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 or what a lot of loopers like to do. A lot of loopers like to do. So now you see how the various delay things work like that. And notice there I am. I'm back in back in my dynamic CQ again. Okay. So that was very interesting. And that's why we do it, right? We got to see how all these things work. So you have something like a guitar to bass that you don't have to worry so much about, because it basically, as the lower frequencies go, you don't have to worry so much about it, because it's naturally, you're feeling it more than you are hearing it. See, I was actually kind of belting out a melody there, but that's the point of what I'm saying. Guitar to bass, even usually some filter stuff. So that's kind of what I used for my high. And I'm not even covering my mouth. I'm just literally going like this instead of like this. You know what I mean? Okay. So and if I was podcasting, this is pretty much what I do with my interviews. If I'm doing judge streams, I usually just keep an EQ on. And now, of course, if you're new to looping, it has low, mid, high. Basically starts with as low as you get all the way up to the high. And then, of course, the last one is the plus 20. So as I've said in previous tutorials, all of these, one of each parameter of each effect corresponds to a knob. And that's without doing the crazy assign stuff. We're not going to talk about assign stuff really, because that's not really about, loudness. So it depends, kind of like a combination. So here I already have something pretty much minus. If I now you can imagine if I were to raise that up, then it might what we call peak. Another cool thing is this thing right here, the red peak. It's a pretty good detector of that it's too loud. Not just necessarily too loud, but when this peaks, that means the sound quality is bad. And again, this isn't about sound quality, it's about protecting your hearing, right? So we talk. So that pretty much demonstrates a lot of the filter stuff. Um, Here is something that, and this is gonna be more towards the on the TFX side, but when you have things like cutoff stuff, let's cut off stuff like this. Usually around here, and same thing with ring mod, and I'll show you ring modulator. Basically past 50 to 60, something like that. That's when it's might not necessarily too loud, but just shrill. So if it's too much, then you know what to do. If it's 0 to 100, and you look here, you don't want to go past that, right? And like I promised you, I would show you phaser, kind of the same. Well, no, not really phaser. Yeah, not really phaser. Scratch that out. So filter, and then over to ring mod. Same thing there. You see how this down here, but then as soon as if I were to go like this, if I knew that this was already EQ plus 20, I would probably not trigger that A button right now, because I'm always paying attention to what's going on here, and if I already, so that's like ring mod. Make sure if you're in that predicament, if you're in the middle of a parameter, you can always use the left button to go back, and that way you can turn it off. Just like when I had all the grand delay stuff on C, I showed you how to press the left button and go back and turn it off. It just immediately turns it off, even if it was on that feedback 100 stuff. A lot of this other stuff is fine. Pitch bend, it can get tricky. You see how already a plus 20, a plus 10, it's really not that bad. But listen carefully. It just gets worse and worse and worse. Whereas, like I was saying, and as it gets lower, you're feeling it more instead of just really hearing it. So the pitch bend stuff is pretty. It relates very much to the filter and ring mod stuff. So most of these, okay, vocal disc. We really got to talk about vocal disc here. I already did a tutorial comparing the vocal disc to the filter stuff. Check that out. That was about on February 2021. So the factory setting, you see how it's immediately, because it has a level. Level is pretty much the EQ. So if I would honestly put it down. So again, vocal disc is another example. If you know it's going to be loud, and you know something else is there, you probably don't want to trigger it. So if anything, if that was like this, okay, so probably turn that down. If I'm going to demonstrate to you distortion, for some reason, the distortion leads to loudness. You see how pretty much the same thing we were saying on those other effects, 60s, 70s, 80s. It's pretty loud. It's pretty loud. So the tone isn't making it any better. The tone, if you go minus, kind of like when we did that tutorial when I was telling you about that. It just makes things a lot more bearable, right? Okay. Dynamics, we already talked about that. A lot of these other ones, octave, it relates to guitar to bass. I did an octave tutorial. Check that out. A lot of these other things. The slicer tremolo stuff doesn't make it necessarily louder. That I wouldn't really worry too much about. Now, basically, the E levels. And most of these things are triggered by this, right? So your phaser, again, something if you already have planned ahead, like a preset or something, you might want to do this, then then press the button. So if you know something, maybe you might want to keep the depth down. Let's say you really want your audience to know your phaser, and you want to keep some other parameter down quite a bit. Then you can go there and then you can press your button and phase. And the same process I'd recommend if you want to flange, just double check so that in this case it's convenient for our purposes here because the rate's pretty low, depth. I mean, this is just factory resets. That's another thing. Factory sets or factory defaults, factory resets. Basically, once you unbox the RC505, a lot of these things will be 50 or in the middle, right? So that looks pretty moderate. And lo-fi is another. Lo-fi can get. You see what I mean? You gotta be careful with that. The bit depth you gotta watch out for. That's another one. You see how immediately bit depth number 1, I could have a pretty low sample rate. That you see how it doesn't matter. Balance is only in the middle. So this is my point here. Some of these parameters are like you really gotta watch out for. That's why I'm making this tutorial in the first place, right? So I could have this balance down here, and still have a bit depth of 1, and it still could really, especially when this is going through a really big live speaker, something you really got to watch out for. So that's lo-fi. Ring we talked about. These are just kind of repeats. With the delays we already talked about. Roll, you got to work. Roll. See. That's another thing. You want to be cognizant of your feedbacks. So if you really want to turn the stuff off, if you notice something is too loud, it's the same thing that we were showing you with the feedback 100 stuff, with the delays for roll. You see? Or this is a pop quiz from what I taught you 7 minutes ago. Is you can go back with the left arrow and turn it off. Chorus, it kind of takes a while to get there. So like right there, that you don't have to worry too much about the chorus. Reverb, not too much. Okay, and then you got your T effects, pretty much same thing. So that's the I effects part. Now in each of these tracks, you have play levels. And now this next part is kind of gonna get into mixing, and this tutorial isn't to teach you mixing. It's just real basic stuff here. So I'd always just go back, and the factory default is 100. So if it's less than 100, that means I'm singing something, and then I know it's gonna automatically not be a normal level. And then, so this 120 is greater than 100, so it's going to be louder. My percussion is pretty high, and you're probably like, wait, that's going to peak, right? Well, no. My kick drum is naturally weak in my mouth when I do it, so it's just a bunch of complicated EQ stuff, and I'll probably make that a different tutorial for another time. But there are some drum sounds other sounds that are just naturally quiet. And if it's naturally quiet, then that's the opposite sound. And if we're talking if your purpose is to talk about what's too soft, then go in the user's manual, because the user's manual will tell you about if things are too soft. That's another reason why I'm doing this tutorial, because it does not teach you if things are too loud, right? Okay. So getting back on track here, whatever number you want, 0 to 200, whatever. Okay, faders. Self-explanatory. And shout out to Boss Roland, because each of these has its own fader. So if let's say you're building it up and you have this here, if you know that a part might get a little bit too loud, let's just pretend. I would move this down before dropping it all, right? Um, you know. Now another quick thing is if it's playing, this is just let's pretend for some reason that was too loud for you. That's why each of these has its own stop button, right? So you have stop buttons, you have fades, you can click edit. Now when you hit edit, it's gonna start off with reverse, so you're gonna have to go hit the right one time, and then from there with your memory, blah 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 blah, right? Okay, and if you wanna have a drum in, same thing. You gotta go all the way over to the level. So for that, level, level, level. Okay, that's self-explanatory. All start stop. Just make sure that you dealt with this and with this, and make sure that you're not messing with TFX, especially if you're a beginning looper, before you do the all start stop. Okay. Now, let's pretend you did the all like. Let's pretend that's fine. Okay. The last part of this tutorial is the TFX and some of the system stuff. So the system stuff, remember the system impacts this entire machine. So line out level, it just depends on you. I like to keep it a little bit under 100. Out, I like to keep that out. Shout out to MadSpeed, who was helping me with some of that stuff. Okay. Memory is whatever the memory slot is. So this is memory slot number 4, right? So 100, this is your factory default, right? 100. If it's too loud, and I showed you some cool fade tricks in a tutorial from about a year ago. So check that out. We're gonna move on. So that's a solution. The rest of these comp, yeah, keep it. If you're going to YouTube, shout out to MadSpeed who taught me this. Use a 0 comp. Other than that, the rest of these are should be kept. I think they should be kept at a norm. That's just assigned stuff. We're not getting into assigned stuff. And at any time in every tutorial, I keep repeating on purpose to hit the right button. If you found something that you feel, like solved your personal loudness issue, don't be afraid to hit the right. I'd rather you stop what you're doing, save it, then move on. Okay, so now track effects. So a really good example, always make sure to double check how many of these are actually triggering. Because there might be some times you might have way more and you only wanted some of them. So please don't hesitate. Let's say I did this. I could do that. I can move a fader back. I can do this. Cognizant if it's on or off. And now if I know, if I want to do that, of course you can do that. You can hit your all start stop. So hopefully I just showed you. So that what I just did was the EQ. I wanted to show it to you because EQ is the easiest way that I can demonstrate added effects as it pertains to this tutorial about loudness. Because I could show you the same thing. Synthesizer, synth is a big thing. Vocal disk, a lot of loopers do that, and I'm just using. Whoops, I don't know why I'm on B, but anyway. Synth is a big, wherever that went. Where did synth go? See? Right off the bat. But knowing what I taught you, and you see how some of these get pretty sensitive, and it's not even that far. I mean, look at that. It's already very loud for me. So you could do the cool knob thing if you want to compromise with yourself, like, hey, I like this effect, hey, I don't. Okay, so I think that wraps up every single part of this machine as it deals with protecting your hearing. Thank you.
All right, so hopefully that helped you. We are gonna continue the interview series. I have a few other ideas coming up, not so much the safety, kind of go more back to like the technical side of like this effect or breaking down this kind of technique, something like that. So I will see you on the next one. Now, as for other playlists on this Milz Musician YouTube channel that you're currently watching this on, we will continue interviews. So depending on whenever you watch this, we're in the middle of season 2, so year 2021. We're going to continue going back to the Discord 202 Plus server battles, which are more kind of a chill, anything goes, which I'll explain in a different video in time. Please check my Instagram. That's where I have most up-to-date stuff. That's where I keep my stories, any shorts, whatever like that. So I will see you next time, this platform and or Instagram.